The name of today's story is The Skeleton in the Cupboard. The television was on in the Basu household, and Himanshu was glued to it. His eyes never left the screen. His favorite serial, Detective Danny, was on. Just as Danny was going to reveal the culprit's name, his mother called out to him, "Himanshu, it's very late. Eat your dinner." Himanshu was annoyed. "Wait, Ma, Detective Danny is on." Detective Danny, all the time you are watching him." "I love him, Ma. I will be a detective when I grow up and solve many mysteries." Himanshu's friend Arnav was also a Detective Danny fan, and in the evening they would discuss the serial. Sometimes they would take the magnifying glass from Arnav's detective kit and go about in the garden below looking for clues. Then one day, a gentleman, Mr. Das, came to live in their colony. Mr. Das had rented a house near the garden. Everyone was curious to know who he was and what he did. But Mr. Das was very secretive. He rarely talked to anyone in the colony. He would go out for work in the morning and return home late in the evening. At night, he would sit in his porch and read books. Sometimes Himanshu could see the light on in his house till late at night. He would be working on his laptop. Many times Himanshu and Arnav would smile at him, but he always gave them a grumpy look. There is something certainly not right with Mr. Das. He is always secretive and suspicious. "I smell something fishy," said Arnav. The children started keeping an eye on Mr. Das. They would hover around his house and look at him suspiciously. And one day, all their reasons to be suspicious seemed to come true. It was rather late at night, and Himanshu was standing at his window when he saw Mr. Das coming from somewhere in his car. He got off and opened the trunk of his car and pulled out a suitcase. The suitcase seemed heavy. Mr. Das was dragging the suitcase to his house and was nervously looking here and there. Himanshu hid behind his curtain and watched. Mr. Das took the suitcase inside. Himanshu watched as he took out something from the suitcase and put it in the cupboard. He could not see clearly, so brought out his binoculars. But what he saw scared him, and he let out a loud gasp. It was a skeleton. Mr. Das was putting a skeleton in his cupboard. The next day, he told his friend Arnav, "We must go to the police station and inform," said he. "Don't you think we should tell our parents first, Himanshu?" said Arnav. "They will never believe us." So they went to the police station and reported the matter. The police did not believe them at first, but then they decided to see. Mr. Das was just leaving the house when the police arrived with Arnav and Himanshu. When the police told Mr. Das what the children had said, he was furious. What? I can't believe this, officer, that you believe these nosy children," he said. "I saw you put a skeleton in your cupboard," said Himanshu. At that point, Mr. Das's eyes widened and he seemed amused. This was the first time that the children had seen him smile. "Come, officer," he said. "Let me show you." They all went inside. Mr. Das opened his cupboard, and sure enough, the skeleton was there. When the police officer saw the skeleton, he gave a loud laugh. Children, that is a model. Mr. Das works as a professor in a college and needs it for his biology class. You watch too many serials of Detective Danny. The children felt embarrassed and ashamed and apologized to Mr. Das and promised not to jump to conclusions